p.m. I'm going to call to order the special meeting in person of the Village Board of Trustees for the Village of Sister Bay for Tuesday, October 4th, 2022. Roll call, Zashki here.
Lyons here.
Baker here.
Cox here.
Kanako here.
And have we heard anything one way or the other from Denise?
I have not, have you had nothing?
Okay, then we'll need to mark her absent.
And Nate.
And Nate.
And Nate will have, did we hear from Nate? Okay, so they're both unexcused absent. Okay, I'm gonna motion that we approve the agenda as published. Second by Cox, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Before I ask the public who's here with us this evening for any comments or concerns on a non-agenda item, I just want to clarify the same thing that we clarified at the last public fire station meeting on the topic of the buildings, which is public input closed as of that meeting. All of our trustees have received each and every piece of correspondence relating to the three buildings. And they've all received and read through and assessed all of the meeting minutes, both virtual and in public, on the topic. So if you sent in prior communication, it has all been part of what everyone has studied. I just wanted to clarify that again for everyone. So we're thankful for everyone who is here to see how the three buildings get discussed and how the board decides to move forward. So thank you all for coming. With that in mind, do we have any comments or concerns from the public on a non-agenda item this evening? Okay, hearing none, I'll move directly to our discussion items, and for the edification of everyone who's here, just so you understand the process we're going to go through. We are here tonight as the village board to discuss and see where that discussion leads related to official recommendations on the three buildings that have come from various village committees after all of the work and assessment that's gone in. So I will announce for clarity before we talk about each building, what the recommendation or recommendations from the committees up to the board are. So in that regard, in section 5A this evening, the current parks and maintenance building on Mill Road and whether we should retain or rebuild that building. The Parks, Properties and Streets Committee did convene on this and officially recommend to the village board that a new parks and maintenance building be built at the new village development on 52 acres of land near the water treatment plant. So that is the official recommendation that we have from Parks. And with that, I turn it over to my fellow trustees for any discussion on the recommendation.
Rob, can I just add? So it's to the Wiltsey property or at that sports complex property. And then they also approved putting 2.5 million into the CIP for.
Right, and the, yes, and the other thing, just for clarity's sake too, and the reason I referred to it as we did, and as people in the public may know, if you've been coming to meetings, we've been in the habit of referring to the 52 acres of land we've annexed in that area to quote unquote the Wiltsey property. One of the things we've also been going through as a village is trying to break the chain of nicknames for certain areas, like a part of the waterfront park that's referred to as Lean Out Hill that nobody really knows exactly what that means. That type of thing. You know, when we speak to the Wiltsey property, we're talking about the 52 acres of land that's adjacent to the water treatment plant near the Ball Diamond, the sports complex, etc. Thank you.
To the east.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah. So that's the recommendation we have. Is there any? The only other thing I would add for trustees edification is probably one of the most noted things at our past public meeting. One of the things that the public who was here had a lot of unity on was supporting vocally, as we spoke about the Parks and Maintenance Building, that in addition to relocating it to that area, that we should look at ultimately converting that old Parks and Maintenance Building to some sort of public parking, okay? Also, what came about, and as you may have noticed in your minutes and on the summary that was provided to us by staff today, there were some Parks Committee members who said, you know, that's a great idea, let's not, you know, at this point, you know, Parks isn't saying let's commit to that as a recommendation. It is worthy of discussion, so just, I add that just so everybody knows, and if you saw it in the packet, I mean, certainly we can discuss any aspect of it we'd like to, but I am in support, as I was at Parks, that we, you know, move forward on plans to relocate that building out of the new development.
I have no objection to that. What are our timeframes? Do you know, are you talking that moving it out in 2 years or?
Can I
Go
address
ahead,
that? So, first of all, we'd have to finalize the plans, you know, is it going to the Wiltsey site or is it going on the sports complex property off
Okay.
Autumn? We would have to do an RFP for a design build to find out exactly what would the building look like, how much would it cost? We would have to, you know, get the money and everything and actually build it. Then we can vacate that property and have it torn down. So you're realistically looking, in a perfect world, 2 years.
Okay.
And that's why, if I recollect the conversation, and that's how we came to that $2.5 million number, was surmising that we would essentially be looking at possibly a year from now finalizing quotes and then a year of construction in the best case scenario. But taking into account how construction costs could go, that seemed like a feasible number to
And
devote at a plan standpoint.
I actually think it's time for that building.
Okay.
I don't mean to jump the gun, but like, is there any talk of like what they would do with the current property then, like once they tear the building down?
Well, what was expressed at the last public forum meeting, and those who are here would recall, there was a lot of community support for the idea of turning it into some sort of truly public park.
Oh, okay.
As folks who were at that meeting and are here tonight will recall, some of the citizen comments was, you know, yes, that's a good idea, but hopefully it wouldn't become something where it's supposedly public parking, but then it's there and you find out a restaurant or a hotel gets some of it. That was expressed by multiple citizens, and those of us who were there at that meeting expressed support for the idea that, yes, if we were to look at it as ultimately becoming a parking area,
Mhm.
that it would be completely a public lot. Now, the other thing that has come up, Mary, at prior meetings where this was a topic at the same time as the public, you know, leading up to the public session, was we do need to do at some point in that process, we would need to do the due diligence of having the DNR assess with staff. Are we buildable, or, you know, can that entire lot be converted to something? Is the entire lot usable?
Mhm.
Okay, right now where that building ends to the back of that property, it's a marshland. There was discussion about that area from longtime residents that, you know, is it wetlands? Is it just a situation of when there's water in springtime, there's water levels? Our outgoing village administrator, prior administrator to Julie, did make the assessment that it was, you know, potentially, if not probably, wetlands. That's been disputed in theory by various members of the committees. My point, having been along the way, due diligence wise, we would just need to do an assessment of that. You know, before we would, even if we were just gonna turn the whole thing into a parking lot as far back as we could go, we should know before we would do anything there, how far back on the property we could go.
Mhm.
Because indeed, that could impact, you know, I mean, if it becomes most favorable to a majority vote to say, let's turn it into parking if we can get X number of vehicles conveniently there. If the type of survey with the DNR would say, well, you can only go back 2/3 of the way, that might, change people's opinion on
Sure.
what's usable. So all that'll be assessed.
Yeah.
Richard, huh?
Well, I just never knew going up the hill behind the Parks building that it was wet back there.
Yeah, well, and yeah, there were several people mentioned over, like Jerry Knutson, who was here, said, over the years, is from the time he was young, going back there to that area, other people said that's, question whether it's wetlands or it's just an area in spring when snow melt, that it holds water, whatever. But the point being is, when Bo took me on a walkthrough of
I heard
that,
it.
yeah, I just want to make sure we do due diligence, that's
I
all.
know when they put the garden in behind the library, the landscaping company, they were questioning what that was back there. And I don't recall, that was years ago.
Yeah.
Don't recall how
Yeah,
that was
so
resolved.
we would do due diligence at the proper time down the road.
Okay.
Any other discussion? I will motion that we move forward with, as outlined, move forward with the process of relocating the Parks and Maintenance Building to the 52 acres
56.
site, 56 acre new site, commonly referred to as the Wiltie property,
Or the sports complex.
yeah, or the sports complex.
Second,
Second by Baker, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried, okay. Item 5B, the Village Boathouse and a potential use as a museum. We had 2 recommendations from committees on the boathouse. The Parks, Properties and Streets Committee recommends that the first floor of the boathouse be converted to a maritime history museum, with one of the displays being the historic shadow boat. And additionally, the Plan Commission recommends that the village discontinue any further renting of the upstairs apartment, and that the Shadow Friends Group be permitted to move forward with a remodel of the first floor, with architectural renderings of that remodel to be presented for approval by the Plan Commission. So one of the things that led to the Plan Commission's recommendation was the confirmation coming up from the public Zoom meeting when members of that Friends group for the Shadow, cleared up how much money that they had available, that they were confident they had money available to start that remodel process.
One thing you should note that Marina recommended moving forward with it as well, because the portion of the money that the Friends Group has raised already is gonna be used for infrastructure at the marina, which benefits the marina.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that, because that wasn't in our packet, so I'm glad you mentioned it. So we've got Marina recommending the same thing. Any discussion on trustees on that? I will motion that we accept both committee recommendations, and that the first floor of the boathouse be converted to a maritime history museum, with one of the displays being the shadow boat, and that the village discontinue further renting of the upstairs, and that the Shadow Friends Group be permitted to move forward with a remodel of the first floor with architectural renderings of the plan to the Plan Commission for approval.
All seconded, but before I'm both
Second, and then discussion?
discussion, neither Parks nor Marina mentioned about not renting out the upstairs. Neither of those committees.
Right, only Plan Commission did.
Yeah, so I just want to make note that I'm seconding this motion to discuss that further. But that is 2 of those committees, you said those committees, right? The plan didn't, the other 2 committees did not address not renting it out. And I am not in favor of that, until those 2 committees would agree to that.
What's the reason for not?
It's
renting it
a
out?
revenue generator for the village. It brings in.
No, but I mean, like,
Ju-
why was the recommendation to not rent it?
From plan,
The recommendation from Plan Commission to not rent it any further was driven by discussion on the fact that it's an open door to a conflict of interest for the village to be a landlord. of that building that, quite frankly, a significant conflict of interest has been created by the tenant that was chosen by representatives of the village through the marina. And that further discussion said, if, and there's notes on this in the packet, that if, to Chad's point, if a majority of the board wanted to continue to hold on to that second floor rental site as a revenue driver for the village, that we should turn it over, the rental selection, the handling of who is there, the market price, the maximization of revenue, that it should be turned over to a third-party property management company or a realtor to handle running that, so that we're not the landlord. And we're not putting ourselves in the position of people saying, how come person A is renting that, and how come person A is only paying X when VRBO or Airbnb would charge Y or Z, and then we, have a conflict of interest potential. So where that discussion essentially stopped and moved, so basically then a majority of the plan commission, and it was Nate Bell who, and it's noted in our packet, Nate Bell was the one who then said, you know what, I'm gonna motion that we don't even, my motion is we don't even further rent it anymore, and then that passed by majority.
There was also some discussion though about opening it up as, so you could have more museum artifacts in there, like maybe there's a famous sail that hangs from the ceiling, or maybe something, so, because otherwise it's gonna be pretty small and limited museum, and by opening up that second floor, you would be able to expand what you could offer in that
Yeah,
museum.
and that was, yes, that was, thank you for clarifying that too. That was part of it as well, as if, okay, if it's becoming a maritime history museum, we already know now, or, the position was the shadow should be one of the things in there, maybe a larger boat, something that the option to use the whole space for the continuance of the museum should be possible. Yeah, yes, Jeff.
Parks and Marina both were for the shadow display. The discussion on who to rent to and when to rent to, that's fine, no problem with the village trying to maximize that to the best of their ability. But neither of those committees went so far as to say the second floor should be open and things of the flag should be discussed. None of them discussed not renting out the top side of that building. I know I sat on Marina or Parks for a while where we jacked our prices up in the park because, that's kind of what we all thought, like, why are we letting private individuals use our park, keeping it away from the public? But then we realized we were $15,000-$20,000 short when how much revenue was coming in. And I just think there's budget implications that we should consider before I'm gonna vote for it here. While two of the three committees didn't address it, I don't have a problem with it opening. Back in the day, there was a village administrator two times ago that came to our company. We made an agreement, and within 2 weeks, he was trying to get a restaurant there. So then we said, no, we're just not gonna mess with this. The Marina Committee realized it's a lot easier to rent to one person. They made that decision long before the current tenant. There was a previous tenant. So there's been a lot of precedent and story with it, and I don't mind exploring maximizing it or not doing it. But I think that's just another discussion that I don't think we should address right now when two of the three committees you're discussing haven't addressed it. And one of them being Marina, which is part of the Marina.
Yeah, I guess, look, I'm gonna agree with Chad on this. I also think that just because something is confusing and hard and difficult doesn't mean we should, tuck tail and not do it. We can figure out a way to do it. So to the point of saying, well, it's getting too confusing, so let's just not do it.
Okay.
We're better than that, I think. So if there's a way to get it done, we should, and if it's outsourcing it to another party to manage on behalf of the village. Okay, but those things should be explored, I think.
So then I'm sensing, my sensing that the sensible thing would be to rescind our motions and let you make a new recommendation.
Yeah, I mean,
I think that's
yeah,
gonna be cleanest, so
I-
I made the motion, I'll rescind my motion,
I'll-
and then who did the
I'll,
second?
I second it, so I'll rescind.
Okay, so then do you want to offer?
And for the record,
on a
I think
different
we,
motion?
I'm all for exploring this more. I just think there needs to be more input, especially by the marina that is in control of the boathouse. For them not to give that recommendation, not saying they get all say, but it is a part of the budgeting process. It is a significant amount of money. They could make more money, right? Especially if, you know, I clean it or you clean it, Rob. But servicing it was the issue that the marina decided was something that was just something they didn't want to get into.
And
I'm just giving you a little history. I'm not saying
Yeah,
it shouldn't change. I'm just
I
giving you some
not
history.
only understand that, but in theory, up to and including my own opinion expressed at Plan Commission, support everything you're saying, with the exception of, I'm totally against the village in any way, shape, or form picking the tenant. Because the bottom line is,
I don't think any of those saw
that has
understand.
related
No.
to a significant problem for staff and
Yeah, I don't think any of us would
committees
disagree
and the
with that.
board and.
But we shouldn't take it off the table as an option.
So I'm all in, you know, and I was very clear in saying, you know, if indeed we're going to continue, if a majority of the board is going to continue to want to look at it as a revenue driver for the village, then part of that is maximizing it and turning it over to somebody who specializes in that, so.
Perhaps we could make a motion on what happens with the lower level and revisit the upper
Yeah,
level when
I was
it's
gonna
closer
suggest
to the renewal of the lease.
So I will offer a motion for, I will motion that we move forward with the first floor of the boathouse conversion to a maritime history museum, with one of the displays being the shadow boat, with the Shadow Friends Group to be authorized to move forward with that remodel and to present to the Plan Commission architectural renderings for approval.
I'll second that.
Okay? Any more discussion on that? All in favor, say aye.
I,
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay. Is the board comfortable with consensus that we move the topic of how we would proceed with the rental of the second floor, as the possibility of the rental of the second floor, to a discussion between the board and parks, or the board and marina, or how do we want to make a separate motion driving that? How do you?
I mean, I think sending a notion to the marina, like, hey, the board's concerned with how we're doing this. Make the marina committee come up with some recommendations. And obviously the board has always signed off on the renter. So it's not like the board's been out of that decision. Every time there's been a renter there and every time money's been paid, the board has agreed to it every time. So it's never escaped the board, but I think to send it down to the marina and have us discuss it, knowing the board doesn't like the process. And if the board wants to send any recommendations down, go do it.
And so you're saying we would only send it to the Marina Committee,
Well,
not
it-
Parks, just because it would confuse things more?
Marina committee kind of is in charge of the boathouse,
Oh,
so
okay.
it's.
So, yeah,
too many committees here, Mary.
and that's part of the reason why Parks didn't offer a recommendation on the rental aspect, just the museum aspect. So in that regard, I would motion that the village board direct the Marina Committee to reassess how we would rent the second floor through a third-party source, rather than remaining the landlord upon completion of the current lease.
sounds good.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
I,
Opposed, motion carried. Thank you. Item number 5C, the old village hall on North Bay Shore Drive, retainer raise. We had the recommendation from the Parks, Properties and Streets Committee to retain and remodel the village hall. and to create an ad hoc village hall committee comprised of trustees, village committee members, residents, and citizens. And I would just, before we start discussion on that, I'd like to clarify for everyone present from the public, when we say a committee that would include in part residents and citizens, I'm gonna read to you directly from our village bylaws on committees what that means. So when we say residents, resident shall mean a person who resides in the village and is a registered voter or eligible to become a registered voter. And a citizen shall mean a person who is a village property owner, the owner of a business located in the village, or a person with recognized experience and qualifications for a particular committee, whether they be a resident or non-resident of the village. So that's the recommendation we have from Parks, that we retain and remodel the village hall and create an ad hoc village hall committee comprised as noted. And that the $100,000 that's been budgeted, the other thing that we discussed along with that is that the $100,000 that's budgeted for remodeling the hall remain there as ultimately available funds that to be considered still on the books by this committee is
For design work,
for whatever.
For whatever may be needed.
Whatever would come as the committee moves forward. So any discussion on that?
Now, some discussion was about Friends of Village Hall.
That's right.
Well, yeah, and what started was, the idea of, similar to what we have for the ice rink, of Friends of the Ice
Yeah.
Rink. Of Friends of the Village Hall, and then Chad pointed out that,
Scott doesn't like friends groups, so.
Okay,
I
keep
said-
in mind-
Nervous when-
keep in mind the way that, that maybe someday this would lead to that, but that it should start in the manner that the other committees have, so that we would also have some, that the village would provide some administrative structure to the process. So in that regard, I would offer as part of this that, and for clarification for everyone present tonight, like we would do with any other new committee, the village administrative committee would take the lead on the process of developing recommendations to the board on what the size and structure of that committee should be. And then if we, have any trustees that are interested in being a part of the committee or leading the committee, that they should let the village president or the village administrator know, I would say by October 15th. And then I would also include in that, our residents and citizens know that anyone interested in being on the committee should contact via email, either the administrator or the president, and include qualifications and experience, also a short email bio and your resume, for us to consider. And then, from there, we would come back to the board and say, okay, as a board agenda item, this is what we've come up with ideas, and then it would be essentially a draft for the board to consider, and that would be the time for the board to say, you know what, this is what we think the number should be, this is how many of, et cetera, et cetera. I think the important thing, that needs to, work itself out through the administrative process, but that tonight, I would say, we should decide on whether or not we support, retention and remodeling.
I'll make a motion to support the recommendation by Parks and make that a motion that we create that ad hoc committee.
Okay. All right, I will second by Cox. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. So for those of you who are here in particular and relating to the village hall, thank you again for all your passionate involvement in the meetings and your conveyances of what it means to you and what it means to the community moving forward. I'm glad to say that we embrace those sentiments and have taken to heart and mind all of the sentiments expressed. So again, let me just reiterate, we'll look forward very much. I know Julie and I will very much look forward to receiving any contact from any of you who are interested in participating in that committee. And, you know, just send us an email. If you don't know our emails, you're welcome to ask us after the meeting or to call the village office and get them. And just give us a brief bio on you and whether you're a resident or a citizen, as we noted. And if you have any particular qualifications that would pertain to this, building, design, ADA compliance, fundraising, whatever it may be, note it in your, you know, your resume that you send us. And we will look forward to considering everybody and keeping everyone posted.
And Rob brought this up in Parks, even if you're not on the committee, go to all the meetings, be involved.
Yeah.
One of the most frustrating things about being on some of these committees
Yeah.
is nobody else comes.
Yeah.
Come.
Yeah.
Be involved.
Yeah.
Don't, just don't not come.
Right.
Good point.
And, you know, the other thing I would just say is, you know, for those of us who have been at all the meetings, you know, we had a maximum of 69 citizens at the last public meeting when the public input happened. We had probably 50 the meeting before that or thereabouts. Less tonight, but you know, that's understandable. You know, certainly, you know, leading up to notifying us, or as, you know, the committee moves forward and gets developed, you know, definitely feel free to involve yourself with people on the committee who are citizens and residents as well as, you know, attending the meetings or whatnot, and then we'll really, you know, everyone will have the best chance to share input moving forward. Is there anything else tonight on these three topics that anyone wanted to mention? Okay. Again, I'd just like to say, for those of you who are here tonight that have been on all the meetings or some of the meetings up till now, or just here tonight for the first time, thank you. Very glad to see your community spirit and involvement in this, and we look forward to it continuing. So thank you very much. I have 6:32, so at 6:32, I will motion that we adjourn for the evening.
Second?
Second by Baker. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everybody.